Whoa, hold on there, Inky Pinkies. I happen to be a fan of chronology, so let's roll this back to the beginning. Hi, Irene at Inkworks here. For this watercolor painting session, I'd already chosen an online reference image from Pixabay. So these are the tools and supplies I'd gathered, featuring my current favorite cold-pressed watercolor paper, Hanamulla collection. Initially, I'd used a yellow colored pencil to sketch the design, but as I was having a hard time keeping track of all the petals, I went in with a graphite pencil to better delineate them. For paints, I chose only 5 from my drawer of watercolors. To simplify the selection process, I stuck with colors from the Da Vinci brand. The specific colors are listed on screen. There were enough details in my sketch to show where the folds and shadows lay, but I then used a kneaded eraser to remove some of the graphite, since too much can dull or muddy your paint colors, and I wanted the yellow in particular to be as vibrant as possible. There was still more graphite than I liked, but I needed it there for guidance, since both my eyesight and my memory are not what they used to be. I chose to use this Escoda versatile brush in a number 8 round. It was gifted to me by a lovely viewer, and it's what I use when I want to feel fancy. The majority of the painting was done with this brush, but a couple of times I did come in with a number 4 quill from Princeton's Neptune series. So yeah, I think it was just those 2 brushes for the entire painting portion. Other mediums used at the end include a couple of colored pencils for definition and a Neocolor 2 crayon for sparing highlights. Also, some blending powder. Normally, I might have started with a yellow wash as an underpainting, but I wanted to change things up and try painting area by area. I think it took longer this way overall, and there were times when I got impatient and a bit sloppy. But there might not have been the same level of detail if I'd done things differently, and I wanted this piece to be somewhat realistic rather than loose or abstract. I do love Da Vinci's watercolors. A while back, I'd done a video titled If I Had to Pick One Watercolor Brand, and this one came out on top for its quality and overall value. Unfortunately, their pricing has gone up, like so many things, but there are still deals to be had. Although there are more $15 tubes, that's the 15 ml size, at this time, there are still select colors for $9 or $10. Plus, they have a wide assortment of curated color sets. Something for everyone, I think. Although they aren't present on Amazon, they are available at Blick's Art Materials and on the official Da Vinci Paints website, of course. Escoda brushes are from Spain and are well regarded in the world of watercolors. Their versatile line uses synthetic Kolinsky sable hair. It's a popular choice, I think, and I've had nothing but good experiences with this brush so far. Just a reminder, this paper is Hanamulla Collection 140-pound, cold-pressed, and 100% cotton. I've always loved roses, ever since I was a kid, actually. Perhaps it was because, while growing up, our next-door neighbor had a row of rose bushes along our shared fence line. That meant there was the occasional bloom that peeked through to our side. So we got to enjoy them without all the work of tending them. But I chose this subject because it's nearing the end of the season, and I wanted to give summer 2022 an appropriate send-off. Sort of a you. I kid. It's more of a go away horrible heat, neck burns, and back sweats. I don't want to see you again until summer 2023, if that. Because as far as I'm concerned, once September hits, it's autumn time, which might possibly be when this video finally drops. Producer Mike and I have been spending time with visiting family members, so I've been distracted from creating. On the other hand, we had a much needed outing away from the studio. I'd been feeling stir crazy and had a bad case of cooped up artist eye twitch, so we headed out for a lovely day by the waterfront. A plate of fish and chips and a chocolate or two can soothe quite a few ragged edges, I tell you. Best of all, though, was the stop at Artist and Craftsman Supply in downtown Tacoma. It was mostly just window shopping, but we picked up a little something that I'll share in a future video. On the subject of videos, I recently watched one of those language pet peeves ones, supposedly from an expert, and I felt a bit let down for a couple of reasons. Firstly, once again, I fell for a clickbaity thumbnail. It was all, "Don't you hate this?" And I was like, yeah, that's the worst. But it ended up being only about 5% of the content. Secondly, the message was essentially, "It's all good, so don't let it bug you," which I agree with for the most part, but I felt like he crossed a line at accepting literally in place of figuratively. Sure, I can probably deduce the meaning from context, but should I? Should I? And I've come to the conclusion that yes, yes, I should. I've read up a bit on the history of language and came across some good points. Yes, I'm a fuddy-duddy in some ways, but I can go with the flow too. For example, I'd been using they as a singular pronoun for pretty much all of my life, but when I recently received a text using it, my hackles rose. I guess because I'm more stringent about written language. It's interesting, though, because I've read Ridley Walker, well, a long time ago, and I don't recall much except that it was written in a futuristic post-apocalypse English dialect. And I've also read Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. That was written in Middle English, which was roughly from 1100s to 1500s. So, yeah, language changes. The point is, I'm the one who needs to bend, because this is a self-driving car, and I'm just along for the ride. I keep 2 water jars to the side. There was a brief period when I tried to get by with just one, but I don't recommend that. 2 is better, and I even want to get a 3rd. My dream studio would have a sink, preferably one of those big laundry room style sinks, just because I'd like to be able to chuck things in it to clean up later. But a small bar sink would be sufficient, since the main purpose is easy access to clean water. What's in your dream art studio? Big windows for light and ventilation? A flash-forged 3D printer? Perhaps a wine dispenser? As you ponder the possibilities, listen to some relaxing music while I take a short snack break. Back in a few. Although I pulled out a dark green colored pencil, I ended up not using it. Instead, I used a chartreuse and a little later an orange colored pencil for added definition. I believe both were polychromos from Faber-Castell. On the subject of colors, my favorite gold nail polish makes another appearance. It's flawless from pure ice. That's one of the cheapest brands out there. I've only ever seen it at Walmart and Dollar Tree. I've had this one for a number of years, and the reason I can still use it is because I've discovered a product called nail lacquer thinner. Old nail polish can be thick and unusable, but a few drops of thinner can save it from the trash bin. There's an art analogy in there somewhere, but I'm not up to digging it up, rinsing it off, and polishing it with a non-abrasive cloth. It's one of those days. To any Only Murders in the Buildings fans watching, wasn't the season 2 finale a delight? To be honest, episode 8, Hello Darkness, wasn't all that exciting, but episode 10, I Know Who Did It, left me happy and mostly satisfied. Yeah, I dig that show, but I've realized that limiting each season to 10 episodes is a good thing. You don't want to be surrounded by too much murder and mayhem after all. Else you'll start jumping at every suspicious sound in the house. I'm looking at you, Ice Cube Maker. While this piece is mostly watercolor, it's technically mixed media, with the inclusion of colored pencils and this, Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2, a water-soluble wax pastel, in white for some highlights. I wasn't sure it would show enough, but it worked well, I think, lending a soft white glow. It looks more subtle than if I'd used bleed-proof white medium, which is what I've used in the past. Next time, maybe I'll try highlighting with white gouache, now that I have some. Parts of the penciling ended up standing out a little too much, so afterward I pulled out Brush and Pencil's Powder Blender, which is intended for oil-based colored pencils. I've used it several times since receiving a sample packet from a kind viewer. You just apply it with a foam makeup applicator, and it does a nice job of softening those harsh pencil strokes. It brings to mind my mother's perfumed body powder, or I believe it was also referred to as dusting powder. Just another way to smell good with the added benefit of absorbing perspiration. How well that works is unclear, but I expect a stick of Powder Fresh Secret would do a better job. Then again, maybe dusting powders don't get enough credit. All I know is my mother had some in her special drawer of treasures, along with some fancy soap and costume jewelry, mostly secondhand or from Avon. As a child, I was fascinated by the Avon lady's blue and green tapestry case. It looked like luggage, but was full of the newest product samples and brochures. The representative was usually a neighbor who understood that at our house she was more likely to get coffee and conversation rather than a sale, but she would sometimes hook us up with discontinued items. Those miniature lipsticks were a hoot. If you'd like to see examples of some of the things I've just referenced, simply search for Vintage Avon on Pinterest. I'm happy to share this painting experience. It's been a while since I did a project this involved, and it was very satisfying, especially during the late stages when it looked like things were coming together. Until next time, brace yourselves for autumn and stay artsy, my friends.